Washington was already hot that morning. But inside the House Oversight Committee, something else was boiling, and it wasn't the air conditioning. Everyone thought it would be another routine hearing. Another round of grandstanding. Another carefully choreographed dance between power and performance. Until she walked in. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett took her seat without saying a word. Navy blazer, gold brooch, no entourage, no theatrics, just a folder. A blue folder. Across from her sat former President Donald Trump, relaxed, smiling, and ready to talk his way through the storm like he always had. His tie was red. His posture? Dominant. Or at least, that's what he wanted people to see. But beneath the surface, something was off. A twitch in his finger, a slight sheen of sweat, and a glance just a little too quick toward the cameras. Because even Trump could sense what everyone else missed. This wasn't going to be a normal hearing. Jasmine Crockett wasn't here for political points. She wasn't reading off a script. She came prepared with evidence, timing, and a level of calm that made people in the room sit up just a little straighter. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. From the very first moment, it was clear. This wasn't a debate. It was a dismantling in slow motion. And the man across from her? He just didn't know it yet. And on A. Trump leaned in with his trademark grin. This gift, he said, wasn't for me. It was for the country. We've got the best lawyers. Everything's been cleared. It's completely legal. Cameras flashed. Laughter stirred behind him. A few aides even exhaled in relief. Then came the silence. Jasmine didn't blink. She didn't flinch. She simply waited 3 seconds longer than comfortable and replied, "Mr. President, I'm less interested in whether it's legal." She opened her folder slowly, and more concerned whether it's constitutional. The room fell quiet. A subtle shift, the kind only experienced professionals recognize, where one person is no longer responding to power but quietly taking it. And that's when everything changed. Because what came next wasn't just a question. It was the first move in a strategy that would leave an entire congressional room breathless and ignite a national conversation about influence, accountability, and the cost of staying silent when the Constitution is on the line. Jasmine Crockett knew what it felt like to be dismissed. She'd felt it in courtrooms where judges interrupted her mid-sentence, but let opposing counsel ramble on for hours. She'd felt it in meetings where men with fewer facts but louder voices took credit for her strategy. She'd felt it every time someone looked at her and saw anything but a lawyer, a leader, a force to be reckoned with. But today, she wasn't there to prove herself. She was there to make something clear. This wasn't the courtroom, and it wasn't campaign season. This was the Constitution's turf, and she came, carrying its weight, page by page, sealed inside that blue folder. People thought she made her name in Congress. They didn't know the truth. Before she ever walked into a hearing room, she fought for the voiceless. Public defender, defense attorney. The kind of lawyer who stood beside clients who couldn't afford high-priced firms or political favors, just the law, and someone who knew how to use it. She wasn't famous for her fire. She was respected for her focus. And that folder? It didn't hold talking points. It held timelines, receipts, signatures, email chains. It held the kind of evidence that made denials sound like delay tactics. That's why she didn't rush. While others performed for cameras, she studied footnotes. While others crafted sound bites, she built a case. Because Jasmine Crockett wasn't playing defense anymore. She was in control now. And when she opened that folder-owned page at a time, the man across from her wouldn't just face scrutiny. He'd face sequence, strategy, structure. Every page had a purpose. Every pause had a point. And soon, the nation would realize this wasn't a hearing. It was a reckoning. You think you've seen her strongest move? Not yet. Because what happens next isn't just a clash of opinions. It's a precision takedown, built question by question, where silence cuts sharper than sound, and the most powerful man in the room realizes he's no longer holding the power. Keep watching, because in the next 5 minutes, everything begins to unravel. He leaned in, confident, comfortable, maybe a little too comfortable. The plane, Donald Trump said, flashing that familiar half-smile, was a gift to the country, not to me. It's completely legal. We've got fantastic lawyers who've looked at it. It's done. Cameras clicked. A few chuckles stirred behind him. The kind of response that usually ended the conversation before it ever began. But Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't meet him with outrage. She met him with calm, the kind of calm that unsettles the unprepared. She tapped once on her folder, then looked him dead in the eye. "Are you certain, Mr. President," she asked, "that this aircraft will never become a private asset?" The question lingered, not because of how it was said, but because of what it implied. Behind her, the gallery fell still. A few aides glanced at each other. Trump adjusted his tie. "Well, I mean, it's going to the Department of Defense. It's a diplomatic favor. A gesture of goodwill, that's all." Crockett nodded slowly. "And after your term ends? It goes to the library. That's standard. All presidents have one." She didn't argue. She didn't interrupt. She just let the answer land. And then she asked the next question. "Will that library be managed by a federal agency? Or by a private foundation with your family listed as directors?" Another pause. Another shift in the room's energy. Because what she was doing wasn't just fact-finding. It was cross-examination. Each question narrowed his room to move. Each response painted him further into a corner. And she wasn't improvising. She was executing. Trump, known for dominating conversations, now found himself reacting, redirecting, trying to steer away. But Jasmine never followed. "Just so we're clear," she said, carefully flipping a page in her folder. "You confirmed earlier that you visited the aircraft in person before this deal was announced. That visit happened on the 15th of February. Your son met with Qatari officials on the 1st of March. The Department of Defense was informed the 10th of March, correct?" Trump shifted again. "I have many meetings. I don't recall every detail." Jasmine slid a printed itinerary across the table. "No accusation, just sequence. Then please confirm if this schedule is accurate." And just like Thaith validated the timeline himself, the trap hadn't closed yet. But everyone in that room could see it being built on quiet question at a time. She hadn't raised her voice once. And yet, the entire hearing room was silent. The former president had just confirmed the time linea, critical mistake he didn't yet realize he had made. Jasmine Crockett adjusted her glasses, slowly opened the next tab in her blue folder and said, "Let's turn to the documentation." She laid a printed contract on the desk, page 17, clearly marked with a yellow tab. "This is the acceptance agreement between the State Department and the government of Qatar." Trump sat back, arms folded now. She tapped her pen against a highlighted paragraph. "This clause outlines the final disposition of the aircraft. Asset to be transferred post-term to the Donald J. Trump Presidential Library Foundation, a private entity, not part of the National Archives system." Trump blinked. A pause. Then, "That's just standard legal language. It's all symbolic." But Jasmine wasn't here for symbols. She was here for structure. "Sir, I have the IRS registration for that foundation. It lists you, your eldest son, and 2 senior staffers as sole directors. That means you, not the government, retain control of the asset." A quiet gasp echoed in the chamber. One of the law students in the gallery scribbled furiously into her notes. "I also have here," Jasmine continued, flipping again, "the Treasury Department's report on necessary modifications for the aircraft to meet national security standards." She held up the figure with calm clarity. $1.2 billion. All taxpayer funded. Trump leaned forward, frustration beginning to surface. "Look, it's still a net win. Boeing was late. Qatar stepped up. This is savings." Jasmine let the moment hang. Then, with striking stillness, she lifted a photo. "This is you, Mr. President, standing alongside the Qatari investment minister and your son, taken 2 weeks before the deal was announced." Trump's expression tightened. And then came the paper trail. An internal email from his chief of staff referencing the library transfer. A handwritten note, initialed by Trump. Handled. Proceed. A draft proposal outlining future development opportunities in states where Trump properties had stalled, now revived with Qatari partnerships. Every sheet, every signature, every timestamp was a nail in the narrative. "This isn't speculation," Jasmine said. "This is structure designed to convert a $400 million diplomatic gesture into a privately controlled, taxpayer-upgraded asset worth 4 times that amount." And with that, she closed the folder. But the silence it left behind spoke volumes. The silence stretched. Not out of confusion, but out of recognition. Everyone in that room had just heard something that couldn't be unheard. Trump leaned forward, voice sharp now. We followed every rule. It's legal. Period. Jasmine didn't respond. Not right away. She looked down at her folder, then up, calm as ever. Legal, she said softly, is not the same as constitutional. The words didn't echo, but they landed like thunder. Cameras zoomed in. Aides froze mid-note. Even the stenographer paused, uncertain for a heartbeat whether to type it in bold. Trump blinked hard, then sat back, visibly rattled. This is just political theater, he snapped. You people don't understand diplomacy. But Jasmine didn't bite. She didn't raise her tone. She didn't even shift in her seat. She just looked at him. Let the stillness speak louder than any rebuttal ever could. And in that moment, the power dynamic inverted. A man known for dominating headlines, for controlling the tempo of any room, suddenly found himself reacting to a woman who had said just one sentence, a sentence that, within hours, would be trending worldwide. Legal is not the same as constitutional. It wasn't just a line. It was a reckoning, and the hearing would never be the same again. By the time the hearing ended, the world had already moved. The cameras were off, the microphones packed away, but the phrase still echoed. Legal is not the same as constitutional. By noon, it was trending. By evening, it was everywhere. Number legal is not constitutional hit 1 million tweets in 6 hours. TikTok creators broke it down. Civics teachers rewrote lesson plans. And Americans, many for the first time, opened their web browsers and typed in one simple question. What is the emoluments clause? Searches for that phrase surged by over 7,000% overnight. And just like that, a plane became a principle. Because the story was no longer about aircraft parts or diplomatic gestures. It was about something deeper. Who draws the line between power and responsibility? Across dinner tables in Michigan, church halls in Georgia, barbershops in Chicago, and classrooms in California, people weren't debating politics, they were debating ethics. A retired judge in Vermont sent the hearing clip to his former clerks with one note. That's how the Constitution is supposed to sound. On cable news, constitutional, scholarsome, conservative, some liberal agreed for once. This wasn't about attacking a president. It was about defending a principle. Even some members of Trump's own party began shifting tone. We may need to review this arrangement more carefully, one senator told reporters that evening. Carefully measured. And through it all, Jasmine Crockett said nothing more. No press tour. No victory lap. Just a single, written statement. This was never about politics. It was and remains about the Constitution. That silence only added fuel to the movement. Young organizers printed T-shirts with her, quote, law professors dissected her questioning strategy in lecture halls. Even a corporate CEO referenced her line in an employee ethics seminar. We follow laws, but we also follow values. For many Americans, especially those who'd spent decades feeling unheard in rooms of power, Crockett's quiet confrontation wasn't just a political moment. It was personal validation. A reminder that truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it just reads the next page in the folder. She didn't celebrate. There were no fist pumps, no dramatic sound bites, no viral selfies outside the hearing room. Jasmine Crockett simply gathered her documents, closed the blue folder, and quietly stood up. The room was still buzzing, reporters shouting questions, committee staff whispering in corners, aides rushing to control the narrative now spiraling across every major platform. But she didn't respond to any of it. Because to her, this wasn't about winning. It was about reminding. Later that day, when pressed by a local journalist outside the Capitol for a comment on her performance, Crockett paused. She took a breath. Then said, calmly and clearly, I didn't come here to humiliate anyone. I came here to remind this chamber and this country of something simple. The Constitution doesn't pick sides. It doesn't wear red or blue. It has no party. It has only principles. That sentence didn't go viral, but it stayed with people. A retired Marine in Arizona shared it with his grandchildren. A nurse in Atlanta quoted it on her whiteboard for her team. A high school teacher in Kansas wrote it across the chalkboard before class started. Because in a time when so much of public life feels like performance, she chose conviction over applause. She chose structure over spectacle. What struck Americans most wasn't the evidence she delivered, though it was airtight. It wasn't even the silence she weaponized so expertly. It was her restraint. She had the spotlight and refused to abuse it. She had the power and chose instead to elevate the principle. In an era where headlines are measured in outrage and moments of truth are too often drowned out by noise, she did something rare. She let the evidence speak. She let the Constitution breathe. And that, perhaps more than anything, is why people remember this hearing not as a political victory, but as a national correction. For once, the story wasn't about a person in power being taken down. It was about a principle standing up. Because when Jasmine Crockett closed that blue folder, she didn't just finish a line of questioning. She reopened something bigger. Faith. In process. In preparation. In truth that doesn't shout. In law that doesn't bend. And as Americans walked away from their screens that evening, some inspired, some shaken, many newly curious, they didn't all agree on what should happen next. But they agreed on this. For 11 minutes, one woman reminded a nation what accountability looks like. And she did it without yelling, without personal attacks, without vengeance, just a folder and a voice that refused to forget what the oath of office really means.